Hi students, this is Mrs. Mignell with another look at a updraft and giving you some comments about how to go about revising your updraft. I did not look at the peer comments for this particular draft. The first example I gave did not have any peer uh, comments on it, so I couldn't see if anybody asked for more about. If your peers have asked for more about details, then you should incorporate more details so that your reader understands what you're saying. So starting on this first page, I have given the title Rhetorical Analysis Updraft, and I've noticed that there was no introduction. This, where it begins here, is kind of a summary of what happens in the movie, and now you're trying to write this revised draft, especially for a reader who's not in your head. And that requires that you introduce your reader to the point that you're going to make. Now, I found this bolded part here. I thought that this was the point that the essay makes. In the end, Elle is respected by her classmates and held in high esteem because of the screenwriters and director making her character credible by her receiving her Harvard Law School degree and being held in high regards from her professor as well as her classmates in being chosen to give the last speech. The rationality and the relatability with the quote from Aristotle, which is something that the scene I analyze, so you have to be careful about that. And then the emotions and passions of hard work and confidence and reliance. It's still kind of trying to figure out what it's trying to say. I think I think what you're saying is that in the end, Elle Woods is no longer a questionable character. She has been made credible by getting into law school, and she's held in high regard by her professor as well as her colleagues. Now, you do have to connect this with what's this saying about college. That is not there yet. So, what kind of impact does this movie have on viewers in the audience and their perception of going to law school? That needs to be connected. Try to see if you can't connect that. So what I did is I zoomed down to the end of this essay, and I found the point that was probably trying to be made in the conclusion. This is very typical that a successful draft, and maybe it's not your first draft, but maybe it's your second draft, by the conclusion you're figuring out what you have to say about it. So then you take the point that you have and you do have to place it up in your introduction, and here you need an introduction that will ease the reader from the real world into your essay world of where you're going to be discussing a couple scenes from Legally Blonde and proving the point that you have about a, I would say, a fashionista, blonde fashionista, not held in high regard from many people, was through attending Harvard Law School, made credible, and that connects to college. That would be a decent thesis to prove. So here I say your beginning analysis has to establish how Elle Woods was not viewed as credible by her boyfriend and Harvard Law School classmates in order to analyze her speech at the end of the movie where you claim that she's now credible. So your introduction with your point, and then you do have to kind of walk us through how she's not credible by Warner dumping her, by the classmates refusing to accept her into the group, or stick on Warner and him saying that she's never going to make the grades and she's not going to be able to pass a class. So, and then you can come down to this matter of her being selected as the class speaker at the end of the movie by her classmates. I have gone through this next paragraph and I have tweaked it so that it makes better sense. So pause it and go ahead and read it, my corrections, and then let me explain. So the original paragraph started off to begin with, and this was the paragraph right after that first paragraph, which was confusing for me as a reader because this paragraph is focusing on the last scene in the movie, but it begins with "to begin with." So instead, I put "at the end of Legally Blonde, the screenwriters used ethos to depict Elle as credible because they gave her the role of a Harvard law student." I even say graduating, gave her the role of a graduating, right? Because that's the last thing, graduating. Harvard law student. And as she was going to be a newly graduate of Harvard Law School, she was chosen to give a speech. This sentence I moved because it didn't make sense there to me. The professor who introduces her as a well-known and is well-known, I guess that's what it means, is well-known, and is honored to welcome her to give a speech and therefore creates a feeling of, and this is the wrong word, genuineness. Is that what you were going for? You had genuinity. I don't think that's a word. So genuineness. So Professor Stromwell presents Elle by saying, "I am personally very honored to introduce this year's class elected speaker. I am sure that we are going to see great things from her." So I kind of repeated the same thing here, so I could probably even take out that sentence and go right in here, because you clarified your idea better in this sentence. You were trying to work out your idea in this one, and then you really got to the idea that you were trying to say. You don't need to restate the same idea in two different sentences. This is the idea that you were going for, and you quoted. So this introduction, a prologue, is something that begins before the story, and this is like an end log, really. It's at the end, epilogue, it's at the end of the movie. So this, I would say, introduction to the concluding scene enables the audience to know about Elle's exceptional accomplishments all through her law school career. And law school is different than college. This is graduate school. Just as her good notoriety from the teacher and being, I would say, class chosen, I would say, to give the concluding graduation speech. Okay, the other part, her kindred understudies, that didn't make any sense to me. I did not understand what that meant, so I'm just going to delete those. So I'm going to stop there. I think what I pointed out here is now you have a point to make. You need to give that introduction. You need to think better about guiding your reader through your reasoning. You can't put something at the end of the movie and say "to begin with," because it's at the end of the movie. So in between here, give us a buildup of how she was not credible, but probably, and then discuss just as I pointed out in the first example, in addition to describing the scene, you do need to be able to explain in a separate paragraph how one or two of the rhetorical appeals of credibility or logic or emotions affected the viewers finding Elle credible, and maybe even thinking that they too could be found credible by going to law school.